In this tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to UV unwrap this arch. So the first thing I need to do is set it up for materials. So I'm going to click on the material editor, which is a button up here. I also need to verify, all right, looks like I'm set up with the right materials. Yeah, I got the right render. So I'm going to bring over a multi-sub object material. I'm going to select my arch and assign that to it. And my arch goes black because I don't have any materials. So I'm going to drag over a standard, open that up. I can get rid of this reference and delete that old material that's not being used. Alright, so I previously provided some textures. You can find them on the class drive. Alright, there's this brick, so I'm going to go ahead and put that on there. So I'm just going to drag it in here. And there's also a trim texture. I'm going to bring that in as well. So let's plug this in here. This gets plugged into the diffuse channel. We'll call this A_brick. And let's bring in another standard, and this will be B_trim. And now I can plug this in. This gets plugged into the diffuse color. And I could double click on these icons to make them larger, easier to see what they're doing. Now I just plug these materials in here. Let's right click and say layout children. And now I'm just going to use those two. So let's set our number to 2 and say OK. Alright, so now I have a tiling brick and this trim texture. They've been assigned to my arch. I can close this. So you can see we have some, some of the pieces were built to have UVs on them, right? Like the sweep. You can see the sweep actually was built with some UVs on it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to actually come in. We're going to select my model. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go into element and I'm going to click on this arch that already has some basic UVs, and I'm going to click on the other one. And I'm just going to say detach so that those are now a separate object. All right. And now the rest of this, I'm going to go ahead and say edit, select all, and I'm going to assign them one material ID, which is, there you go, Polygon material IDs. I'm going to assign them all 1. So you can see that looks like they need some UVs going there. So I'm just going to click on the top level there, and I'm going to put a UVW map on. I'm going to go into the gizmo, and let's turn this into a box. And so we built this arch, so it was on a 400 grid. So let's go ahead and square this off to be 400 units. And I'm going to select the gizmo here and set it so it sits at 0, 0, and then 200, because the height is 400. That sets that square in the middle. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set it to tile. I'm going to tile this 2 times on both of those. There we go. I can right click and say convert to editable poly. So you can see already, like, the arch has some UVs on it, which is pretty cool. All right, there it is. Sorry, my machine is running a little bit slow here. Okay, so now we don't want brick on the entire thing, right? We're going to want to get some variety of material types. So I'm going to come in and select this, go into element, and I'm going to change to select object up here, because I'm going to click on different parts of this, and I don't want to accidentally move them. Also, I'm going to go to display, and I'm going to make sure I turn on backface cull. There we go. So now I can go back, go to element, and I'm going to select the main body here, and these portions, and do edit, select invert, and all of these pieces I'm actually going to assign a trim texture to. So I'm going to assign those 2. And then I want to get this piece down here at the bottom. So I'm going to click here and then hold shift and click, and then grow that selection and assign that to. Now to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to take this one step further and zoom out here on the top. I'm going to actually select half of my model and just delete it, and then when I'm done I'll just put symmetry on it. Okay, so I'm going to right click and say hide unselected. There's some other stuff here that I'm going to use symmetry on. So why don't we go ahead and click on these pieces. I'm going to detach them so we can unwrap them separately. I'm just kind of orbit around here. And so these pieces that are still on here, we're never going to actually unwrap those because we're just going to unwrap one set and then use symmetry on the others. And then it's interesting because we get in here, now we can see that there's polygons on the bottom or on the top of this arch that you're never going to see. So let's turn on ignore backface and select these polygons and delete them. Let's switch back over to select because we don't want to accidentally be moving stuff. Alright, so we kind of, you'll never see those because the bottom of this is underneath there. So there we go. So we're looking pretty good. At this point, let's go ahead and let's work and get some UVs going. So, oops. All right, good. So one thing I like to do when you're working on a model is you look at it and there's a clear break here where these things come up, and it'd be nice if the brick kind of went up to that height. So let's kind of take a look at our UVs on this model and see if there's a way we could fix that up real easy. So I put an unwrap UVW on. I'm going to open the UV editor, and now I'm going to switch here so that we're just on brick. I'm going to select all these and hit break because I don't want to accidentally move any of the tiling stuff. Alright, so I'm going to go to vertex. I'm going to grab everything and I'm going to click and hold on move to get it to just this vertical. So now I can move that up to get it so that those guys kind of sit right there. And I'm going to deselect this row, kind of do the same thing. And because it's a tiling texture, it's okay that it goes off outside of this, what we call 0 to 1 space. Right, that's absolutely not a problem for us. Let's double check this top row. Where does he line up? He ends up sitting at about 1.874. If we kind of zoom in, it looks like he's just about at the break. If we move him down just a little bit, he'll be sitting right there. Sometimes if you're adjusting shapes, it may cause some distortion, but that's really subtle. So I think we're in really good shape there. Now it looks like our bricks are kind of sitting at those spots, right? You can see how the bricks kind of come around. So I think that's looking pretty good. Another thing that we can do is let's grab, I'm going to go into element, I'm going to click and drag, oops, I want to be in polygon element, click and drag here and then deselect, because really all I'm looking to get is just kind of this, if I could orbit around, I'm trying to get these polygons that make up this top row because I want them to line up with the bricks underneath. So I'm going to break those and then I'm going to switch to regular move and hold lock so I can move that over, turn off lock, and just grab, oops, let's turn off select by element, grab this row and then break it. So then similar to how we were kind of moving stuff around when we did the trim on the block, I'm going to go ahead and select this edge and then deselect it and then weld it over. Alright, so we'll do the same thing here. Grab this edge, deselect on the side and weld it. Right, I brought that over and welded it. Let's orbit around. Grab this edge, deselect the one over to the side, and orbit around. Select this edge, and then weld that. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is, one more time, I'm going to come in here with these vertex points, and I'm going to grab all these, and I actually want to adjust, oops, that's not what I want to do. I want to zoom out. I'm going to turn on select by element, and stay on vertex, and grab all of these. There we go. So I got all these. And now I'm actually going to turn off select by element and then just deselect the bottommost row. So then if I come over to the side, hold this down, and move this down, it'll look like, see how the brick kind of comes up and over there? So it looks more like the brick wraps around. It's a subtle thing, but it's really nice to have. It helps with the aesthetic. Now, you'll also notice the arch, the bricks turn part way up. So let's fix that real quick on our stone. And so we're going to zoom out here, and let's grab this edge. There's the main body here, and so I'm going to deselect from this one and then hit stitch, and that moved it over. There we go. Now you're going to see little green seams here and there. Like those are okay as long as the geometry is connected together. You'll also notice that the UVs are going to look a little weird on the bottom. Really, all we're trying to do with the bottom of this is just make sure there's polygons there in case you should accidentally happen to see it. Although most often you're probably not even going to see it. Also, don't worry about the fact that the brick does not line up here wrapping around on the inside, because if you remember, we have that arch that's UV unwrapped. Okay? So let's take a look at some of the trim elements that we have on our model. So let's zoom out here, and I'm going to change from brick over to the trim. So now we can start taking a look at some of these pieces. Right? If I select these, this is kind of where these pieces sit at. And so we can adjust where those are. What we may want to do is just move them down to this overall concrete portion. And we could probably grab these big blocks here. If I orbit around, I can grab those. There we go. We're getting them all. I'm just going to worry about the ones on the top first. And I'm going to switch to move. And I'm just going to lock my selection because it's hard to get it because it's trying to grab the other polygons there. There we go. So let's kind of set him over to the side. I think what we may need to do here is let's turn off the lock, grab this half and break it, and then move it over. I'm going to use the freeform to get it to kind of fit inside this volume, which is, it's nice on your trims having like a tiling bit of concrete for large areas like this. All right. And now let's get these bottom sections. And so here I am. I'm going to go through and I'm going to click on these. I hit Z there to zoom to select them. And let's just orbit around. I'm just selecting all these elements. I'm going to hit Z to zoom in, and then orbit around some more. Make sure I have all of them. Looks like I do. And now I can go into the UV editor, and I can move these down again, and I'm going to do a similar thing where I'm going to grab these and break them, but then I'm actually going to do what I did before with the trims, where I'm going to select an edge. Oops. Looks like I accidentally closed the UV editor. So edge, I'm going to click on an edge. And then I'm going to deselect it from the geometry that's down here at the bottom and stitch. All right, so I'll select an edge, deselect from the bottom, and stitch. Remember, it's a little bit slow, at least in my version. If you have a more recent computer, Max 2021 will probably run much better than it does for me here. So I'm just using the same techniques from the tiling textures tutorial that we went through and did. Right. There we go. Okay, so now we kind of have those pieces together. I think those are looking fairly good. Let's take a look at some of this other stuff. All right, so what do we have here? Let's set this to trim. All right, so we got top trims and side trims. I think what I'm going to do, click element and click on this piece right here, and I'm going to actually projection map that. And I'm going to click Z, so it's projection mapping from the top, and then turn that off, okay, by clicking on it. And then I'm going to select the polygons. I'm just going to click and drag here. And that gets the polygons on the top and the bottom. And I'm just going to peel those. Oops, that peeled everything. That's not what I want. There's an option here for peel. There we go. Turn off avoid overlap. And then it doesn't try to repack everything constantly. All right, so we'll deal with these pieces a little bit later. I want to just deal with the sides. Excuse me. So I'm going to grab this part and just peel that. This part and peel it. And so what you're seeing is something that is very, very similar to what we did with our column, right? We went through and took those bevel profile pieces and unwrapped them in a similar fashion. I'm going to turning off my angle snap up here. That makes it easier to rotate these and get them lined up. Okay. So let's rotate this around. Okay. So now I can go through and I can figure out, okay, what do I want to wrap these different parts to? It'll help if I take all of them and kind of rotate them. There we go. So here's these parts. And what I can do is take these sections that make up this kind of middle portion and break all those. And I can actually go ahead and stitch them again. Oops, let's turn off select by element. Grab that edge and stitch. See, and stitch those together, and then I can grab this edge and stitch those. And so now what I'll do with this is maybe take this piece, polygon, element, and just move this down here. I'm going to turn off that select by element. Oops. I accidentally hit my quick transform. There we go. Okay. Go to edge now. Or actually, I want to be on vertex. Oh, I undid a little bit too far. Select by element, move that over, go to vertex, turn off select by element, grab the bottom row, and now quick transform, top row, and quick transform. And now I can take all of that over here. I'm kind of lining it up with this back corner of this trim. I'm going to hold control and drag, and then it scales up uniform. There we go. Now let's just grab this this vertex point on the end. And I'm going to align that vertically and just see he sits at -4. Let's just -4.2. We'll just do -4. And that brings it back. And what that'll do is that's going to help with how it sits on the texture. And we can orbit around to kind of see how that trim sits. And that looks kind of consistent. It's in the middle. That's kind of what we're going for. And then we keep doing that with our other pieces, right? Where we're going to take our different parts and kind of split it up and get it to tile those different parts. Now, we don't need to do stitching on all of it, though, right? Like we could take these pieces and let's just hit pack custom to bring them in. So now, oops, let's do edit undo. It should I don't want everything to pack, so we're not going to do that. What we'll do is turn on element, click on this, bring it over, and then these pieces should be about the same in height. So if I take this and hold control and drag it up, so I get them roughly about the same height is really kind of what we're going for, the same thickness. And you could double check how all those are by, like I could take all these and you see how they're all sort of stacked on top of each other. If I turn off select by element, I can go into edge. Give it a second, it's running really slow. Let's grab my edges here, and I'm just going to quick align horizontal. Right, and then it does start to get a little bit confusing the more complicated your model is going through and grabbing those parts. It might not always be an option. You may have too much stuff to select. So, yeah. Like in this case, there's like 3 rows. I'm going to switch to move because the freeform transform keeps getting in my way. See, I can grab these and now work to align them like that. So it's like 4 rows here, it looks like. There we go. I think that's all of them. And then just grab this bottom row, which I'm going to go to vertex. Grab all those and align them. So let's see how that looks. Orbit that around. All right. So now I can take those pieces that I've aligned on top of each other and I can move them over to my trim texture. Oops. I just move those over here. And I'll probably want it to start kind of at probably at like a darker spot. And then I can freeform it to get it to come up. And I want it to kind of terminate. Yeah, kind of like that. So there we go. Well, that's looking pretty cool. And I could take it up further if I want. Kind of break it up between those 2 different pieces. We'll just want to take a look at how they terminate on the side there. Maybe, yeah, that'll probably be good. All right, and then we just have the top row. Right, and the top row will handle the same way. And then there's our different columns, right? And so we just keep going through and doing the same process for the rest, right? The way I unwrap this piece, the way I unwrap this is, the way I unwrap this portion down here, you'll do the same thing here with these portions. And then we'll apply that same thought to unwrapping this piece. And then we'll unwrap this one and probably just clone him over to delete the next one, which we'll do in the next tutorial. But when you come back, this entire top portion I will finish off outside the tutorial, and then I'll pick it up with finishing off these side columns. So there you go. Before you start part 2, go ahead and finish off the top of the column here.